guys, welcome. So today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in the months of September and October, and as always this may contain spoilers, so just bear that in mind. I will put a list of all the books that I mentioned in my description, and also a lot of the books that I mentioned I have talked about in some of my other vlogs, which I go into a lot more detail about. So if you are interested in that and you're interested in more in-depth analysis by yours truly, then go check that out, because like I said, it will have more stuff to talk about. We're going to start with September, obviously, and I read a total of 9 books in September. It was quite a good month for me, September. Like I said, 9 books is quite good. It's usually my average, so I'm pleased with that. However, 2 of those books I won't be talking about because they are New Moon and Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. They're part of the Twilight series, and that's because I'm doing another video to do with that. So yeah, I'm not going to mention those. They're rereads for me anyway, and it's part of another video I'm doing. So yeah, anyway, the first book, which by the way, this is in no particular order, but I did start September with The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. So this is a very autumnal type book, and I'm gonna get fed up and keep saying that because in my vlog I kept saying how autumnal it was. Trust me when I say, if you're looking for like an autumn, fall read, whatever, this, because it is literally on every page. It is beautiful. I love this. This is number 1 in the Dream Harbour series. It is a reread for me. I gave this 4 stars. I don't love it enough to give it a 5 star, but it's a very high 4 star, and that's just because the writing isn't great. However, I do acknowledge with these type of books, if you go in expecting like amazing writing, yeah, that's on you. These books just, they won't have it. However, this author does improve in later books with her writing. It's just not great. It's not awful, it's just not great. About 2 people who fall in love, obviously. It's a slow burn, and we have Jeannie and Logan, and she comes to this small town to run her aunt's cafe, and yeah, that's essentially it. It kind of, you know, they end up getting together. Spoiler, I know, but yeah, and obviously things happen, and it's very Gilmore Girls inspired. It's so cute, like it is so cute. And also, like, what I love about this, it is a bit of Grumpy Sunshine, but which I don't normally tend to go for. However, Logan, he's grumpy in a way that I don't so much mind, in that he's just a bit reserved, and that's it. One of the things that I really do like as well, and I think doesn't really get talked about all that much, is that towards the end Logan gets therapy, which I really like. I think that's really good representation and really good kind of like a healthy thing to be encouraged, especially with men, that he acknowledges that he may need to go to therapy, and he does that, and we see that, and I just love that. I just feel like that doesn't get mentioned about when we talk a lot about these type of books, so love to see it. It should be the bare minimum, I know, but anyway, really love this book. I haven't really got a lot to say because it's not one of those books where like a lot happens, you know. It's just a cozy, cute book, and I love starting off autumn reading this. Like, this is my new thing now, I think, with the Dream Harbour series. I'm going to try and reread the series, the seasons when it happens, if you know what I mean. It is kind of worth the hype, but only if you're into that kind of thing, if that makes sense. If you really want the ultimate cozy autumnal book, get this, read this, and you will not be disappointed with the autumn vibes. I mean, this, like, I tabbed it every time there's like autumnal themes mentioned, and as you can see, it's heavy, like it's heavy. So yeah, love this, go get it. The next one, I'd honestly, I'm not putting this on genuinely. I don't know where to start with this book because it is honestly shit. I'm looking at it now, my notes, and I gave this 2 stars, and I'm like, why? Because honestly, that's very generous of me. Now, a little disclaimer, I actually do like this author, but every book I've read that isn't Haunted Madeline, I haven't liked from this author. So I think it's just time to let it go with this author, because I've read some of her other books which is outside of the Haunted Adeline. I've not been a fan. In fact, I've actually hated them. This fucking book, like, we have Insta Love, which, you know, if you're into that, great, but I'm talking like 2nd page, 3rd page Insta Love. Like, okay, okay, let's just put the brakes on. I haven't even told you what's about because honestly it's a fucking mess. So basically we have the FMC, and I can't remember her name. Oh, lawyer Sawyer. I was gonna call her lawyer. Sawyer. She is, I believe, in her early 20s, and she has to leave America. Is it in Australia? She goes to Australia because she's running from the law. Honestly, I can't really remember, which, by the way, that in itself is just unbelievable. She managed to change her identity by using a stolen passport or something. Like, yeah, you know, just go with it, whatever. Anyway, she ends up in Australia, and she goes to this bar, and she's kind of obviously living off kind of cash, and you know what I mean, trying to make ends meet. And she meets with this guy called Enzo. So we have the FMC and MMC, and he is also a young man, and they meet at this bar, and she almost immediately, and I'm not joking you, starts telling him her life story. You're on the fucking run. Why would you tell this stranger, especially this guy who seems to not like you very much? I know you're in Australia, I know it's unlikely, it's highly unlikely, but you just wouldn't take that risk, especially, you know, if it had been a few years maybe, but like, no. Anyway, that happens. Enzo's sort of this, he's kind of a guy, I don't know what they call it, there's a word for it and I can't remember, but he does a lot of conservation work and he goes out on his boat and he does stuff. He's really into sharks, that's his thing. He's a shark guy, like, I don't know, he's just really into that, and he's into like conservation for sharks, which, you know, is good, we need that. Oh, and that's it, they end up having, you know, intimacies one night. She has a one night stand with him, and then like she steals his money, I think, or his credit card or something, and like she does use his money, like she does spend it, but it's not like, it is a lot, but it's not like thousands, you know, it's like, I think she spends a couple of hundred and it's really not that much. Yeah, okay, obviously don't do that, that's really wrong, blah blah blah, but like the way he was going on about it, you'd think she literally set fire to his house. And instead of going to the police, like he knew she did this, by the way, like he figured it out, and instead of going to the police, he did this whole thing of like trying to track her down and make her pay for that. It was just ridiculous, it was so stupid. Anyway, he ends up finding, it's like, oh, and he's like pretending to be kind of like cool about it, or like he's kind of calling her bluff and like pretending like he, you know, like he doesn't tell her he knows. Anyway, short story, they end up going on the boat, and he's like, do you want to come on the boat with me? And she's like, oh, okay, sure, like, do you want to go see some sharks, blah blah blah, and she's like, okay, sure. There's a scene in that book, so when they're on this boat, they go out quite far away into sea, and they end up having you know, let's just say, I don't know how much I can say on YouTube, intimacies, let's just say that. I think you can guess where that's going. He does some stuff to her where like she would be dead, like she would be fucking dead. I think if you know this story, you probably have heard of this scene, but he dunks her head into the sea where there's sharks doing like a feeding frenzy. You would be dead, like you would be dead, you would be headless, like there's no but it's almost so bad that you can't help but be like, how much bad can this get? Wait, we're not done, we're not fucking done. Because then what happened? They end up shipwrecked because the weather suddenly turns, and Enzo did not predict this, and they end up shipwrecked on this island, and it has a lighthouse and it has a lighthouse keeper, and this lighthouse keeper, I think his name was Sylvester. What this fucking author did to this like lighthouse keeper, I was kind of pissed off with. The author made him kind of creepy and pervy, which annoyed me because I feel like he could have been really interesting character, and he was an interesting character. I was much more interested in his story than I was in them two, but it's like she went down this route, the author went down this route of like making him creepy and pervy, and I feel like, oh, you could have done so much more with this guy. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on with him, so they end up with him, basically. They have to live with him in his lighthouse, and it kind of goes from there. There's a little bit of like a ghost thing happening as well. I was really pissed off as well because the author gave him a peg leg, and I was like, really we are really living in stereotypes here, like what the fuck. So what ends up happening, and I am really doing the short story here because I could go on about this forever and ever because it's just so fucking long-winded for no fucking reason. What ends up happening is he's been keeping his daughter chained up, basically, and they find the daughter, and the daughter's kind of mad and psychotic, so she ends up wanting to try and kill the FMC, which is Sawyer. Sawyer doesn't like that, so obviously she ends up having to sort of kill her in kind of like self-defense. And then what follows is the dumbest fucking thing ever. Oh, and they also kill the lighthouse keeper, or he kills himself. I can't remember, who fucking cares at this point. She took on his dead daughter's identity. So she pretended that she was her because obviously she went missing, and then she pretended that herself died, and that girl, she died basically in the shipwreck. I don't know, it was something like that. She swapped her identity. I'm like, first of all, if you're on the run, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't even mention your identity. Like, I was fuming. Why have I given this 2 stars? What does it say in my notes? This is what my notes is. Sorry about my writing, it's fucking awful. But the front cover is nice, actually, which it was, to be fair. The front cover was nice. Literally the only good thing about this book. It's time to say goodbye to this author, honestly, because it was awful. It was honestly awful. It was like it was wrote by a 12-year-old. It was just, I think even a 12-year-old could write a lot better, to be honest. It was just terrible. And the fucking characters as well were fucking annoying. Like, Enzo was borderline, if not completely abusive. The FMC, Sawyer, whatever fucking name was, she was like so annoying. She was very much like trying to be quirky and like, oh, I'm the quirky girl, and it's like, no, you're just annoying. You're actually fucking annoying. Like, she did this thing, there was like this scene earlier on where she like kind of met this guy, and he like was at a bus stop, and she was like, oh, he was like, oh, I do tattoos, and she was like, oh my god, yeah, let's just do a tattoo. And they had like matching tattoos, and she would call this guy that she met her best friend. her best friend. You've just met this guy and you want to call him your best friend. I'm convinced Sawyer had something a bit wrong with her, to be honest, and she did sort of hint at that throughout the book. It was the most dumbest book I've ever read in my whole fucking life. None of it, I keep swearing, sorry, but like none of it made sense. None of it. If you like this book, why? What's wrong with you? Because it wasn't great. It was actually like, it was so bad that I wanted to kill myself. Anyway, let's talk about a book that I did really enjoy, and that was Pine by Francine Toon. And again, I did mention this in my vlog, so I won't go into massive detail. I ended up giving this a 4-star. Really love this, and this is a high 4-star for me. It's not actually that long. It's very short. I think it's just shy of about 300 pages. It's really not that very long. This is set in the Scottish Highlands, and we have a dad and daughter, and the daughter I believe is about 12 or 13. She's very young, and the dad has recently lost his wife. Well, she's gone missing. No one really knows what happened, and that's kind of what this story kind of goes into. What happened to the wife, because she just kind of went missing, and some people think she may have killed herself. They're not really sure. She's in the book, it's very kind of ambiguous as to what happened to her, because a lot of people think that she was some sort of like gypsy or witch, and like she may have just like, she was very kind of I don't know what the word is, kind of carefree, and like she was kind of known in the community of that, and you know, it's a very small community, and she was kind of known as a bit weird and a bit kind of out there. And yeah, I loved that though. And Lauren really misses her mum, and she doesn't understand, and she, you know, her dad won't really talk about it very much. And the tone in this book is brilliant. It's fantastic. It's so atmospheric. It's so like, you can feel like claustrophobic reading this, but like in a good way, if that makes sense. Like you can feel it, you know, you can feel it as if you're sat there yourself. I think the author did a really good job of that. The characters were good. The dialogue was good. It just, yeah, as you can tell guys, I really loved it. My only criticism why I couldn't quite give it a 5-star, and my husband read this and also said the same thing, so I thought that was interesting. The ending was just very abrupt. It just kind of, oh, like, okay. And yeah, that was my only criticism. It just felt a little bit abrupt. I feel like we could have spent more time with the characters and a bit more time with the story. But yeah, it's essentially a mystery. Yeah, I don't know why am I complicating it. It is a mystery about what happened to the mum, and it is creepy. There's a bit of supernatural in it. It's kind of a bit witchy. And what I love about this is it's set, so you can read this during autumn and or winter, because it's set at the start of September, I believe, and it goes right in, no, Halloween, sorry. It's set at Halloween, and then it goes right up until Christmas. Love that front cover. I don't know if I mentioned that, but yeah, brilliant. Love it. Love anything set in the Scottish Highlands. So then we have a Kindle read that I read called Inside Job by Rebecca Myers. So this is all about Rebecca. So this is non-fiction now, and this was a memoir, well, all about the author's time working in a prison. So she's a psychologist or psychiatrist, sorry, I'm not quite sure of the difference, I do apologise. This was talking about a time in when she worked in prisons in, I believe it was the late 90s, early 2000s. There was a programme at the time called, I think it was SOTP or something along those lines. It was working with violent offenders through group therapy, so they would often reenact what they did, and these range from all kind of ages, but she worked with male, by the way, I should mention that, male violent offenders, and they range from ages, ethnicities, what they did, all that, but they, you know, they were all done for quite violent things. Some of that was sexual, some of that was physical, verbal, you know, whatever, you get the picture. And her and like a police officer would have to like do this group therapy together, and they don't do it anymore. It's been stopped because it was deemed not very basically effective. And she talks about her time dealing with that, because like I said, a lot of the times in the therapy the prisoners would have to reenact what they did and like take it from the perspective of the victim and like how they would have felt. And I kind of get, and you know, the author comments on this too, like I get what that therapy was trying to do, like you know, you get it, you're trying to get some empathy from them and you know, gain some perspective. I don't know if that program was really as effective, and I think the author seemed to think it was, even though it's been stopped. But anyway, I gave this a 4-star. It was good. It was absolutely fascinating. If you're someone like me that loves reading the memoirs, or you love reading stuff about people who work in prison, people who work in hospitals, all that thing, then you'll love this. I did knock a star off though, and I said this in my vlog, because I did mention this book in my vlog. There was a comment that the author made at the start of the book, and it said something along the lines of, I don't like working with women, like women prisoners, because they tend to be too messy and too emotional. Now that wasn't exactly what she said, but it was something along those lines. I didn't like that, because to me it's internalized misogyny. I kind of get what she's trying to say. If anything, as a woman yourself, we should not be talking about women like that, especially. I almost expect it from men, but to say it from a woman, it's like, no, we're not doing that. We're not enforcing that. Well, that may or may not be true. I don't know. Like I said, I've never worked in the prison industry. I could be completely naive. There could be people calling me out here, fair enough. But I just think, well, there's a reason for that. You know, women don't just come across messy and emotional. There's a reason for that. And 9 times out of 10, it's probably because of a man. So wouldn't it be best to like support these women as much as you can? But anyway, that's a different video. But that really pissed me off. So I wasn't a fan of that. However, she kind of did redeem herself later, because she did talk a lot about misogyny and how it's quite rife in prison culture, especially with obviously the prisoners, but also with the staff themselves. When she started out, this was again in the late 90s, and you know, as a female psychologist, they were only just kind of normalizing these, especially females. So she did feel quite intimidated. She did talk about her experience there, which I found very interesting. However, I did also find the author to have a little bit of a saviour complex, and she only really talked about the positives of like therapy in prison, which I get. But it was like, I don't know, I feel like she only kind of glanced, or kind of sort of, I don't know what the word is, kind of touched the surface of like corruption in the prison service and all that kind of stuff. I feel like she could have gone a little bit into that, although I do understand this probably wasn't the book for that, as she was just talking about the group therapy sessions that she did. Absolutely fascinating there. I think that alone where I had to give it 4 stars. It's quite an easy read, although it is tough. Like, obviously check your trigger warnings with this, because oh boy, do they talk about some fucking harrowing stuff. Bear that in mind going in, because I've read some fucked up shit, but even I was like, wow. Yeah, so just bear that in mind going in. The thing is with this book, I did find as easy as it was to read, because it had lots of like little breaks in it, which I was quite thankful for, because some of the stuff was very heavy. You have got to be in a mindset to read it. If you've had a shit day, you're not going to want to read that. So that's why I think sometimes it took me a bit longer. Overall, it was good, it was fascinating, and I would highly recommend if you're into that kind of reading. So the next one I'm going to talk about, again, mention this in my vlog, so I'm not going to go into massive detail, but it is The Game You Played by Anni Taylor. I ended up giving this a 2-star, did not like this. I freaking hated this. This tells the story of a woman whose child goes missing. It's set in Sydney on Australia, and yeah, that's it. Her toddler goes missing, and it kind of unravels to reveal that, and this is now the spoiler, so skip ahead if you don't want to hear, that her husband's lover did it, because her husband was having an affair with one of her friends, and the friend was doing it. It was a fucking slog to get through. It was really like the middle of it. I'm not joking you when I said virtually nothing happened. It was so boring. And there was a thing at the start I forgot about this. There's a thing at the start, and I did go into this in more detail in my vlog, where the FMC Phoebe, the author made a point of being like, oh, by the way, Phoebe's got like this special sense of smell. Like, she can smell, she's always had this almost like extra sensory smell, and like she can smell like traces of stuff. And this person who kidnapped her son was like leaving her messages and stuff, and she could smell like on it the faint traces of coffee, and then she managed to track that down to the coffee shop down the road and things like that. Now that didn't really go anywhere, because then when she found out her friend did it, well, surely you would know, because you would smell, if your husband and your friend were having an affair, then you would smell traces of her on him, right? And things like that. None of it made sense. The only thing that kept me going with that book was I actually genuinely did want to know what happened to Tommy, and that was the toddler that went missing. By the way, her friend ended up just having a private island, as you do. And she had this private island, and her daughter, Tommy, and their husband went to this island, and they ended up there. Oh no, they did they escape there? Well, anyway, they went to this fucking island, I can't remember. And they wanted to kind of live there. And then the husband was like, wait, you've been holding my son here all this time? Oh my God, you're such a bitch. But then was basically like, okay, fine, well, whatever. And it was just a mess. It was horrible. None of the characters were very likeable. I don't know what to say, like, it just wasn't great. I think, like I said, the only thing that kept me going was I genuinely wanted to know what happened to Tommy, and I wanted to know how he was going to go, because I got quite attached to Tommy. I was like, Tommy's kind of cute, I like him. Then I read the Moth Diaries by Rachel Klein. I'm sorry, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. I gave that 3 stars. This was just fine, and I really hate saying that in my reviews, but sometimes a book is just fine. Like, sometimes I don't always have a lot to say about it. It's dark academia, so if you're into that, you'll probably really love this. It tells a story of a teenage girl who goes to a girls' boarding school. It's set in the UK, at least I think it is. And she and her best friend, well, I say her best friend, her friend called Lucy, who she's like, when I say obsessed with her, I'm talking like she writes in her diary every day. She does like these journal entries, and as a reader we read her journal entries, which I did like. I do prefer that style, actually. Weirdly, I do like journal entries when I'm reading, so I did like that style. Her friend Lucy starts befriending this girl who I believe is a new girl called Anessa. They become quite close, and obviously the FMC gets a bit jealous of this, and she does not like Anessa. She thinks she's controlling, she thinks that she can't be trusted, and she thinks she's really weird. And it's kind of, It's very strange in that this book is very much, I would call it a psychological horror. She kind of suspects that she could be a vampire, and it's never really, as the reader, you never really know if that's true or not. Like I said, it's unreliable narrator, so you kind of have to make your own mind up about it. It's hinted that she could be a vampire and that she's draining Lucy, her friend, and that she's taking her energy away, to the point where I think Lucy actually becomes very ill and she can't return to school. So it's kind of like Lucy, the FMC, I can't remember her name, but she feels responsible for this and feels like she has to kind of like help Lucy, and so it kind of goes into that. There's a lot of mentions of self-harm and things like that, and obviously body horror things. Yeah, it's kind of an ED as well. Very kind of dark book, I would say. It's not, yeah, it's quite heavy in places, and you wouldn't expect it when you first go in, but as you get more and more into the book, it's like, whew, this is this is kind of something. I wasn't hooked with this, but I didn't hate it, and it did mildly get my attention, but it's not one of those books I would like I said, it's just very middle of the road. It's just like, it was fine because, you know, it was a book I read, it was fine, it didn't grip me, but I didn't hate it. The main character did piss me off a little bit sometimes. She did come across as very pretentious sometimes, which I was like, girl, just chill out, man, like it's not that deep, you know. Like, I don't know, she was fine, but she did kind of get to me, and she was one of those people that thought they're better than everyone just because like she reads really like quite advanced stuff, and like good for her, like that's great, I think that's brilliant for you. But you know, I don't like people that are like that and then look down on people who don't, because it's like, that doesn't make you better than me, that doesn't make you better than anyone. You're someone that reads intelligent things, and that's great, good for you, and I'm glad you enjoy that, but that doesn't make you better than anyone, not necessarily. So I don't know, sit back down. And then the next book I read, again, this was a Kindle read. This was a surprise for me. I didn't imagine to like it quite as much as I did. And this was The Art of Baking Blind by Sarah Vaughan. Now, Sarah Vaughan is an author that I have come to really like. I had read fairly recently a book from her which turned out to be one of my favourite books of all time, and that is Anatomy of a Scandal. So I'm kind of going on her backlist, and this was on her backlist. I gave this a 4-star. I just really like this. It's a high 4-star, but I couldn't quite give it a 5-star, and I'll talk about that later why. So this tells a story of, I say it tells a story, it's no one in particular, it's a group of people, and it goes from their POVs, and essentially it's a little bit like the British Bake Off, the Great British Bake Off. If you've ever watched that, then it's essentially that, but it's told in such a way that it's just beautiful. They show the contestants and how this, and it is a competition, it's a baking competition, they all enter into it, so like Great British Bake Off, and they all kind of like come together, and like you get to see all their backstories and how they ended up being like really good bakers, and I loved that. It was so good. And the descriptions of food, by the way, probably some of the best descriptions of food I've ever read, ever. Don't read this book when you're hungry, like do not do it, because you will literally, your stomach will growl and you'll be going out at 10 o'clock at night trying to find a really good pastry. It's kind of got like a Mary Berry character in that there's a woman who was known as kind of like a really good baker. It's obviously fictional for the book, can't remember her name, but she was like known in the 60s as a really good baker, and that's who they're trying to like sort of follow in her footsteps. And her story was really interesting. I loved how it was all connected. I love how all the characters connected with each other. I really did connect to each character. Like each character I felt almost quite like I wanted them to do well. Like I felt connected to each character, and I really wanted to do, I just wanted them to do well. And it got to a point where I knew who I wanted to win, and it was the person I wanted, but at this point I really didn't care who won. I just didn't expect her to like it quite as much as I did, because this was one of her like earlier books as well. I really just thought, oh, this is probably not going to be great. I'm not sure if it's her debut, but definitely she was inspired by the Great British Bake Off, there's no doubt about it. Even if you've never seen Bake Off, I still think it's a good read. So yeah, even if you have or haven't seen it, or if you have or if you don't or do like Bake Off, I still think you should read this because it's still really good. Sorry guys, I just realised, I don't know if I mentioned this, I didn't say why I only gave it 4 stars. It was because the ending was a little bit abrupt. I guess there wasn't a lot to say once the winner was announced, but I just felt like it was a bit like, and that was it, bye. It was like, okay. It's just like, I felt like I was so invested in these characters that to end it kind of like that was a bit like, oh, okay. That wraps up September's read, and now I'm going to go into October. I only read 4 books in October, so yeah, not as much as I would have liked. So again, this is in no particular order, but I'm going to talk to you about A Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins. By the way, guys, I'm really sorry if you can hear tapping. My husband's in the kitchen doing work in there, and yeah, you might hear tapping. I'm really sorry, there's nothing I can do about it, just just deal with it. I'm sorry. Again, I'm not going to go into massive detail about this because I did talk about this in my vlog. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed this, more than I thought I would. I have read from this author before and I did enjoy The Girl on the Train that this author also did. This is about a young man on a narrow boat who is found dead. They have to try and find out who did it. And there's basically 4 main female characters and it's all how they're connected. It's all how they're connected to this death. And it's absolutely fascinating. It's very quick pace, so you don't have to worry about it dragging. It does not do that. It's very good pacing. There are really great relationships, especially the relationship between, I think her name was Lauren and Irene. So this is going to be a spoiler, but we find out that the auntie of this guy who died ended up killing him. And this is why, although I did give this a 5 star, it's more of a low 5 star just because the ending, again, it was a little bit a bit silly. I hate to say that. I don't know what else to say about this other than I just absolutely love this. I had my doubts going in just because a lot of people have said that this isn't her best one. And although I do prefer The Girl on the Train still, although I haven't reread that in a while, so I don't still know if I'd really like that. Yeah, it was a real kind of whodunit. It was a real kind of like emotional ride. It was a lot more emotional than I thought it was going to be. And it talks a lot about how women in society are treated in general, like if you're poor, if you're rich. It had a lot to say about that and I appreciated that. My only criticism with this really is that it could have been a little bit oh my god, I can't speak, more diverse. As far as I'm aware, most of the characters, if not all of the characters in this, were white, Caucasian, especially as it was set in London, which, you know, London is known for its multiculturalism. It's known to have a lot of, you know, ethnicities, nationalities, all the rest of it, blah, blah, blah. You get the picture. Basically, more non-white people should have been in this, especially as it was set in London. So that was a bit disappointing. But other than that, it was a good one and I enjoyed it. So there we go. So then I'm going to talk about another book I read. And again, this was mentioned in my vlog, so I'm not going to go into massive detail about it. But it was called The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapena, which I ended up giving a 4 star. Again, more of a high 4 star. So this is so interesting to me, and I did say this in my vlog. Thrillers lately haven't really been doing it for me as much as I love thrillers normally. I was back in my thriller era, let's just say that. When I read those 2 back to back, I was like, oh, I'm back. I am back. Thrillers are back for me. This is how you should do a missing child trope, by the way. This is how you do it. So we have a couple who attend a dinner party with their next door neighbours. So they go round to their next door neighbour's house and they attend this dinner party. This is set in New York, by the way, just, I don't know, background knowledge, I guess, context. And the woman has just recently had a newborn baby. I think it's 6 months old or something like that. And their babysitter cancelled on them that night. So they were like, oh shit, like what should we do? Because the husband really, really wanted to go to this party. It was never really explained why. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, I remember now. But anyway, long story short, they leave the baby at home and they do check on it every half hour and they do bring the baby monitor with them. Kind of irresponsible. But anyway, we move on. And guess what? She comes home to find her baby's missing. And it goes from there and we find out that who actually did it was her dad. Well, it's technically her stepdad, but anyway, she calls him dad. And yeah, he did it because his business was failing and he needed the money. However, in the beginning, it was actually the husband that set it up, but he was meant to get the child back. That was part of the plan so that he could get this money, he could get this ransom, but it went wrong. And that's when it really got interesting because as the reader, you're like, because as soon as I saw that it was him that did it, I was like, oh, it's going to be a bit boring now, but no, it wasn't because it went wrong. And that's where Shari gets us, you see, because we're like, oh, where is this baby? And I was actually concerned for this baby, like, where the fuck is this baby? Like, I wanted to know where this baby was. I was feeling stressed with the parents. Anyway, it turns out the baby was safe and well. It was ended up being looked after by one of her stepdad's associates. I don't fucking know. It got a bit complicated towards the end. It got a bit whatever, but I did like it. I had fun with this. I had fun with it. I'd be lying if I said didn't. That's why I gave it 4 stars. I had to give it 4 stars because I was genuinely loving it. The ending was not great, hence the 4 star rating. And the ending was a bit awful, if I'm being honest. The next door neighbour, the FMC, she ended up killing her next door neighbour. I still don't know if she actually did kill her, but it said that she came out on a stretcher. So she either got killed or at least seriously harmed. So you do with that what you will. I read that as she killed her, which you just got your baby back. and you're going to kill your next door neighbour, even though she wasn't directly responsible, but she did do some horrible things. That's where you lost me a little bit. I felt like there was already enough kind of like shock factors that you didn't need to put that in at the end. Now the next one I'm quite happy to talk about. It is called If It Makes You Happy by Julie Olivia. Love this, 5 stars, absolutely love this. It was set in 1997. It's set in a fictional town in America. It's fall vibes, it's autumn, it's Thanksgiving, it's got Christmas, it's got New Year celebrations. Loved every single, oh, and Halloween, I don't know if I mentioned that. It's got everything. It starts from the 1st of September, goes all the way into the new year, and it's absolutely brilliant. Dare I say, I did prefer this to the Dream Harbour series. I kind of do want the physical copy because it was really good. It was really cute. It was a slow burn romance. It's a bit like, so if you watch Gilmore Girls, it's a little bit like, it's Lorelai and Luke, but almost like kind of reversed. So like the maid at FMC, what was her name? Michelle, that was it, Michelle and Cliff. So Michelle comes back to Copper Run, which is this fictional town, and she runs the inn there that her mum and dad owned, but her mum recently died, so she kind of takes over for a little bit. She's from the city, I think she's from Boston or somewhere like that. And she comes back, and Cliff is her next door neighbour who owns the bakery, and he's got 2 kids, he's got 2 girls. So there's a bit of like a found family in there, and she basically ends up falling in love with him, but she's kind of the grumpy sunshine, so he's the sunshine, she's the grump, which I prefer anyway when the woman's grumpy. Love that, love to see it. And yeah, guys, this was cute. This was so cute. We have single dad trope, we have found family, we have a really good love. The dialogue was a lot better in this. It felt good to read this. I felt good reading this. The only thing was, I would say, my only kind of little criticism, they're so small, they're literally like this small. I just felt like could have been slightly like concised a little bit in parts. Like it wasn't a particularly long read, but I feel like there could have been stuff that's just a little bit cut out. And also, if you watch my vlogs, I did mention this in my vlog, this book, the border collie, that's what I'm going to say. Like that that FMC Michelle, she should not have had that border collie. She had a border collie called Rocket. Yeah, I don't think she should have had that dog. But anyway, did love that book. And then the last 2 books I'm going to talk about was Rewitched and Uncharmed by Lucy Jane Wood. Now these are, so you read Rewitched first and then you read Uncharmed. So I'll start with Rewitched first. So this is Rewitched. There you go, there's my tabs. This was an autumnal type of book that I read again in my vlog. This was part of my vlog in the autumn read. So this is about a girl. It's not about a girl, it's about a woman. I can't remember the FMC's name. Belle, that's it, Belle. So she lives in the UK, she lives in London, and she, well, she doesn't own, but she works at a bookshop. She has been told, because she's turning 30, and she's been told that she needs to use her witch powers, basically, otherwise they'll take it off her. So she kind of hasn't really been using them properly for a number of years. So long story short, that's what she did. She tries to like pass this test. It's called, I think, Equewitch Trial or something. I can't quite remember what it was called, but anyway, so that's what she does. This is kind of marketed as like a cozy fantasy, and I've never done cozy fantasy before. This was my first time with it. It was okay. I ended up giving this a 4 star. I did really like it. I loved the descriptions of autumn in here. I loved the kind of, there were some scenes that were better than others, I will say that. And I think for me, don't know if I necessarily want to reread this, because the middle was a bit of a slog to get through. Like the beginning and the end was really good, and it really picks up towards the end. There's a lot of things that happen and you're like, oh my god. There's a battle that happens with like zodiac signs, which was amazing. There was like, yeah, there was a lot that went on. There's kind of like a romance as well between her and this warlock called Rune, which I quite liked. But that didn't really go anywhere. And then the ending was a bit like, I had a lot of comments about that, and if you watch my vlog you'll know what I mean by that. Overall, for my first time in cozy fantasy, it wasn't that bad. I would have liked to see more, but like I said, it was more of like a low 4 star, low to mid 4 star. It wasn't quite the full 4 stars for me, but I did enjoy it. I think that cover, by the way, is absolutely stunning. I'm thinking maybe is it more of a 3 star, but I did really enjoy certain parts. And there was this one bit that really resonated with me, almost to the point, I don't know if I did label it, but to the point where I was like crying. It has a lot to say about womanhood, and I really did like that. It has a lot to say about what it is to be a woman, and what that experience is like, and yeah, that just, I like that. And then following on from that, that's where Uncharmed come in. So this is the second book. I will say though that you can read these books as standalones, in either order, so it doesn't matter if you read the second before the first. The second book is set in the events before the first book. This tells a story of the FMC called Anni. Now she is a witch, obviously, and she runs her own bakery, and Anni is very much a perfectionist. She's someone who has to get everything right. Quite a controlling character, but she's lovely and she's polite, and she's basically like a Libra. If you've ever known a Libra, that's her. She's very Libra energy. She's very kind of pretty and pink and, you know, girly, and I love that for her. She's, you know, she's working it, but I found her a bit unrelatable to the point where she was very much a perfectionist. Now, I said this in my vlog, I'm not someone who, I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist. I can be, but I wouldn't say that's my default trait. So I did find it quite hard to relate to her. Again, it was kind of the same thing in that nothing really happened until kind of the end. However, this book did have a lot of warmth, like the first book, and it did have a lot of charm to it. So I did find myself like kind of liking it for that. I only gave this 3 stars in the end because honestly a lot of it in the middle was just kind of boring, if I'm being honest. I just felt myself not really wanting to pick it up. In this story as well, she ends up meeting, it's sort of, part of the story is that she gets given, but by her coven, she's asked to sort of like a protege. She has this teenager called Maeve, who she's just recently come into her powers, Maeve, and she has to kind of like an apprentice kind of like help her and guide her kind of thing, and that's kind of her role. And she's quite good at it, but she does also fail. And it's really cute because we do have some found family there. They end up staying in a cabin owned by a warlock who Anni kind of has the hots for. And yeah, it is cute. I like what they do with that. I like the found family in there. That was good. The food descriptions, again, were really good. I think I just had a problem with some of the characters. And also Maeve, the teenager, who was an orphan, who'd gone through so much. She just seemed very emotionally kind of mature for her age. And, you know, I'm not saying that teenagers can't be emotionally mature for their age. I'm just saying that, let's be honest, it's not standard. And not only that, but especially if they've gone through what Maeve had gone through. I don't know, sometimes she would say stuff that was so kind of profound that even Anni was like, the FMC who was like in her 30s would be like, oh. Even she was like, you're kind of like quite wise really, aren't you? So I don't know, there was things like that, and I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if that's quite believable. I will say though, with these books, what I do like is the characters, the FMCs are in their 30s, which I really appreciate. As someone who's going to be turning 30 next year, I have to say, like, thank God, because I don't always want to read FMCs in their 20s. However, I will say I don't know if I'd ever read a third book from this author. If she releases a third book, I think I'm kind of done for now at the very least. It may be another book, but yeah, I don't know if I will do cozy fantasy again. I have got a book actually that I did recently buy, so I might do, but I think this author, maybe for now I'm just gonna go, okay, maybe just not quite for me. I did prefer Rewitched to this one, but yeah, I just felt like Uncharmed was, I don't know, I felt like there was just something missing for me personally. That I felt like the first book really resonated with me, certain things, and this one I just could not connect to as much as I could the first one, so hence my rating of 3 stars. So that's all the books I have for you that I read in the months of September and October. My favourite book, If It Makes You Happy by Olivia, although I will say an honourable mention to Pine. Yeah, this is definitely an honourable mention. I couldn't get it as my favourite book just because I couldn't quite give it 5 stars, but I really did love this. I think it's a high 4 star. It's almost touching a 5 star, but I think, yeah, fortunately that ending was just, ugh. But yeah, If It Makes You Happy by Olivia, definitely. And my worst book, I think you already know, I don't even have to say it, is Does It Hurt? And the question is, HD Carlton, it does hurt. It fucking hurts. But that's all I have for you guys, so thank you so much for watching.